Welcome to the show. As always, let's begin with the latest COVID-19. Last 14 days, 935 cases from March 22nd to April 4th. That's for the last 14 days. Now, in the state of Texas, 2.81 million, with deaths almost rising to 48,874. And this does not look good for Nueces County. 40,005 cases with 751 deaths. United States, none have recovered. State of Texas, no Nueces County. 30.8 million total cases with 555K deaths. 131 million, 74.5 million have recovered, and 2.85 million have died worldwide. In California, the cases total 3.68 million, 1625, 59,661 plus 51, which now brings us almost to over 800. If that happens, California could be seeing 60,000 deaths. Biggest one, 1.22 million in Los Angeles County, plus 509 new cases, and there's also 27 new deaths. Let's look at the daily change in California. In California, it's been going down. Vaccination, state of Texas. As of April 5th, 8.2 million have had at least one dose. 4.6 million have been fully vaccinated. And 16.1% of the population and 28% of the population have had at least one full dose of each vaccine. But what about for California? $13.5. 34.2% of the population have had at least one dose. 7.1 million have been fully vaccinated, and 18.1% have been fully vaccinated. That's the biggest one ever. So what can be done about this? Masks. They're very, very important to you and me. And according to Google, masks are still important. Wear a mask and save lives. That's the new slogan here. Why? It's very important for you to wear a mask when you go out to public places where you're going out shopping. If you don't like it, my suggestion is you go out to just do delivery from Instacart, Favor, DoorDash, whatever. But do not do that in the school. Otherwise, you can get into a lot of trouble by the school district. Even though their rules say no visitation is allowed because of the pandemic, that could be up to the school board. Masks are very important, as always. Make sure you wear them at all times, at the nose, not down here, nor down here. Has to be at the bridge of the nose, as always. Social distancing. If your school allows 6 feet, 3 feet, then 3 feet it is. If not, stay within 6 feet. Follow the markings on the ground. And you'll always use hand sanitizer or bring a bottle of hand sanitizer with you at all times. And for schools, they now disable the old water fountains. Now, so if you don't have a water bottle, you can ask someone to, you can probably have someone donate a bottle of water to the school, and now for all the students, because they need a bottle of water, or they can't afford a bottle of water. Wash your hands every 30 seconds, every hour to help stop the spread of germs. And again, if you have hand sanitizer with you, bring it with you at all times. And if you don't have it, all places should have hand sanitizer. And make sure to disinfect your area every time so that it'll help stop the spread. keep your hands clean all the time because the case is on the rise. Also, if you're under 2 or have a medical condition, if your child's under 2 years old, then they can come in for free. Then they cannot wear a mask. But if you have a medical condition like asthma, let them know beforehand. You ride the airplane or the bus. If you ride the airplane or take the bus, you need to make sure that you wear a mask with you at all times. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Later in this broadcast, a happy retirement Joe Gazen. He is leaving next month, and I look back at what he's done. Very special, and that's a very special tribute. First, when we return, a look at the education gap forced by the pandemic for kids with autism, what they need to know. And then a bit later on, our special on constitutional school. Why schools limit constitutional rights to all children. I think we may have done this before with the First Amendment rights, but why do all schools limit constitutional rights to all students? That's a bit later. Up front tonight, there's an education gap between children with autism and since the pandemic. Tonight, we're going to look at the education gap that's forced the pandemic for students with autism and what I think really needs to happen. But last year, students took a time out for the classroom and 100% virtual. Since then, the on and off from screen to in-person has taken a toll on report cards. The students were in classes full days. Said Patty Huxon, who's an associate professor of special education over the Texas A&M University in Kingsville and Austin, qualified for extended services, and now we're putting them into abbreviated environments. But modern education is mostly taught over a screen, and while a few students might thrive this way, children with autism may likely not. If your child's on the spectrum or not, learning from a screen is not easy. Imagine kids who don't get the resources who don't have autism. They're having a hard time. Imagine kids who do have autism and have special needs. It's a lot harder for them, There's experts out there who say it'll take some time to see exactly how much students lost in the classroom. I think since the pandemic, there's been people who are going back and forth between in-person. Look, stay on one. Don't be going to... You can't be going back and forth about this. That's why all the report cards, every single report card is... Everyone's failing because of that and because of everything. And since then, all kids who are autism, including who are on the spectrum, have been falling behind because of the report cards. I think what needs to happen here is that people have a choice. Go to in-person, go to remote learning, or go to transition. One day you go to remote, one day you go in person. Choose your battle. If you choose both, it's not going to work for all people who are on the spectrum. Your child has to choose two. For regular students, I think it'd probably be the same, but if this works, if this plan would work out for kids who are on autism, the grades would go up, the report cards would be helpful, would be back to the A side, and many people out there, parents can be really proud of their kids. That's what I think needs to happen. Summer camps are back. That's really exciting for all kids. And ever since the pandemic about a year ago, all summer camps have been postponed because of the pandemic. But there are things out there you need to know. You need to make sure that you're wearing masks. You need to make sure that what you gotta do is make sure you wear a mask, make sure you stay social distance, and make sure you bring a bottle of hand sanitizer with you. You make sure your child brings a bottle of hand sanitizer with you at all times with disinfectant wipes and all that stuff, so that they can disinfect your area. So I think it's a great thing for all kids to be going back to the summer camps. A super thing for all children. Now that we're out of education, when we come back, our special on Constitution schools. What does that mean exactly? Well, it means where all schools limit their students' constitutional rights. We've done this one before with First Amendment. Now what we're going to do is go through the rest. And we may go back to the case where where a parent is suing a school for the violation of First Amendment rights because of a Facebook post. Stay with me. Welcome back. Are you a kid in school and you're always good playing? I'm about to tell you your rights as we examine some Supreme Court cases thanks to Hip Hughes. Take a look.
So we're going to start off with some good news. The actual first case that applies to students in a positive manner is 1943. This is West Virginia Board of Education versus Barnett, where a group, a Jehovah's Witness religious group, is basically complaining that they don't want to have to say the Pledge of Allegiance, they don't want to have to salute, and in the 1940s, you were compelled to do so or you could get suspended. And you could see sometimes the saluting was a little bit creepy. But either way, the Supreme Court's going to rule on the side of students who don't want to have to salute, say the Pledge of Allegiance, saying that the government doesn't have the ability to compel you to do that. So it's not so much a freedom of speech kind of idea, but more of kind of a freedom not to have to speak, not to have to act. But the big case, and this is the one you want to study, kiddies, is Tinker versus Des Moines, 1969. So here's the context of the case. It's 1965, the end of 1965, and the Vietnam War is getting a little bit hot, even though it's the Cold War. And Robert Kennedy has basically announced that he wants a truce, a ceasefire, as we approach the Christmas holiday of 1965. And there's a lot of protesters and a lot of anti-war people and a lot of kids that are for this. And that includes the Tinker family. We have John, who is 15, Mary Beth, Paige, Hope, and a friend, Chris Heppard, that get together and they plan on supporting this endeavor by putting on some black armbands and going to the school. And when the Des Moines School District gets hold of this information, and it's not just the high school, but the middle school and the elementary school, they kind of, preempt it by saying, don't you dare. We don't want any of that kind of disturbance when we're trying to do the learning. And the kids do it anyway. And then on December 16th, Mary Beth and Chris Eckhart got suspended. John got suspended the next day. And it probably would have ended there if it wasn't for the lobby group, the civil rights organization, the American Civil Liberties Union, who came in and said, we think we should do something about this. And that case eventually travels to the Supreme Court. They had lost in the lower court of the district court. Court of Appeals was a tie, and now they're there to say that students have some rights, and the court agrees. It's the Warren Court, the liberal activist court, who basically says that it's one thing if you're trying to, promote learning, you're trying to have a calm atmosphere. You're not doing it for that reason. You're doing it because you want to avoid controversy. So students have a right, maybe not to yell in the cafeteria, but they have a right to symbolically protest, even if it's an unpopular opinion, in school. The court says you don't shed your rights at the schoolhouse gate. You got some rights. So enjoy that, because I'm about to poke holes all over your Tinker armband rights. So the first big hole in Tinker is going to be in 1986. It's an episode that occurs in the early 1980s. It's called Bethel School District versus Fraser. And Matthew Fraser is a senior, and he's nominating his friend Jeff to being on the student council. And he gets up there and he says, Jeff is a man who is firm. He is firm in his pants, firm in his character, and firm in his belief in our students. And he will use his point to pound away at this. Ugh. The principal immediately suspends Matthew, saying that you've crossed the line. This isn't freedom of speech. And he's basically saying that's not for you to interpret. This is my freedom of speech. This is the Bill of Rights in action. And the court sides on the side of the school, basically saying that the school has an ability to limit Tinker if it comes to things that they can interpret as being sexual innuendos. And they say, obviously, the kid's referring to that, so we have the right to shut you down on that. And there are current cases. For instance, there's some students, middle school students, who are wearing the I Love Boobies bracelet in kind of the cancer awareness fundraising spirit, and they were suspended, and they actually won their appeals case. It's not going to the Supreme Court. They said that that was a legitimate freedom of expression, and they're allowed to do that. But you better be careful if you're getting a little bit of, you know, close to the hanky-panky, which is hashtag creepy.
That is true.
Another hole for you. This is Morris v. Frederick, 2007. It was an incident that occurred in Anchorage, Alaska in 2002, where a young man by the name of Joseph Frederick wanted to play a little prank. And basically what occurred was there was a Olympic relay coming through town, so Deborah Morris, the principal of the school, released the students early. Joe wasn't there. He showed up a little bit late, but when he showed up across the street from the school, and as the cameras came out, their big moment was going to be on the TV screens. He unhurls the banner, his freedom of speech in action, bong hits for Jesus. I don't know what's going through the kid's head, but I know what's going through Deb Morris's head as she runs across the street and rips it out of his hands. And eventually, he's going to go to the Supreme Court saying, she violated my freedom of speech, she had no right to do that, and the school says, you better sit down, son. Number one, this was sort of a school-sanctioned event. You were supposed to be in school. The school had let out for that purpose. So whether you were there on your own or you're not, you're representing the school. And number two, it's not so much a freedom of speech issue when you're trying to advocate for drug use. And that's interpretable, but the principal gets to make that decision. So even though you're not in school, and even though you believe it's freedom of speech, the school has a right, because it's sending a message about drug use, to not let you put that banner up. So son, you can sit down again, because you're suspended.
You can't print that.
So you want to print an article in the newspaper, don't you? You think you can do whatever you want because of your freedom? I got news for you. That's going to be limited. This is another hole in Tinker. It's called Hazelwood versus Kullmeyer, 1988. And the students basically had written some articles that were first shown to the principal. And one of the articles was on divorce, another one was on teen pregnancy. They were interviewing students, keeping their names anonymous, but the principal was like, I don't think this is a good idea. You're not going to print that. They go all the way to the Supreme Court saying that, you know, if we don't have this freedom of press right in school, how are we going to live it when we get out of school? And the court says, no, school is for learning, and schools have to have ability to have what's called prior restraint, which means you're going to have maybe more limitations on your freedom of expression when it comes to press and school, because that's not really why you're there. You're there to create a learning environment, and if the school believes it's getting in the way of some kind of pedagogical purpose, then it has the ability to do that. So, watch what you print in the newspaper, because you might be going down.
Exactly. Now this is the big one, the Fourth Amendment. There's another case, but let's get to the second.
You can't search me. You ain't got no warrant. Fourth Amendment, baby. Psych. Not in school, you don't. This is New Jersey versus TLO, 1985. And basically these two girls were doing a little bit of a smoking in the bathroom. They come out, someone smells it. The vice principal's like, empty your bag. They're like, we're not going to empty my bag. The vice principal's like, I'm going to empty your bag. And bada boom, you have drug paraphernalia. You're out of here. And now she's going to the court saying he didn't have a right to search my bag. He had no probable cause. He didn't go for a warrant. He just on a whim decided he was going to do this. So it's an illegal search. Therefore, you can't use that in a court of law. Mapp versus Ohio. Needless to say, the court says, sister, you better sit down because you're in big trouble. And what they come down to is basically saying the school has a safety purpose. They have to have the ability if there's reasonable suspicion to be able to search a student's purse. What if there's a gun in there? What if there's something dangerous in there? We can't have this kind
That's why there's rules. No guns, no drugs, no weapons, none of that.
But not an expectation beyond a reasonable suspicion. Who's the reasonable suspicion decider? I guess that would be, the person in authority. So why don't you empty your pockets? Be careful what you do, kids, because you don't get probable cause.
Drug testing.
You can't make me pee in a cup. Well, maybe we can. There's actually 2 court cases that deal with student drug testing. Both of them are random drug testing that occur when you join first an athletic group.
That's right. You join a club or an athletic group, you have to sign a drug. You got to be drug tested.
Where a student was joining a sports team and basically said, "Look, I didn't do anything wrong. You can't make me, give up my pee-pee because you, just randomly drug testing. You have to show I did something wrong." And the court says, "Not so fast, son. We have a duty in school, not only to send a message about saying no to drugs, but broaden that. They're going to broaden the hole in your kind of Bill of Rights shield by saying, nope, the message of drugs is so important, we have such a duty to protect that we have the right to do random drug testings if you join the chess club."
That's right. We have time for one more before we wrap it up. We'll get to that in just a moment. Welcome back. We've been talking about student rights, all the rights students have, and looking at cases with hip Hughes. But I want to look back at a news story that just got my attention while doing this. It was 2 years ago when the parents decided to sue the school just for a Facebook post, and that got the attention to limit free speech. Is it limiting free speech? Take a look.
Police were called to Victory Prep Charter School 14 months ago.
If you don't leave, he's going to press charges.
After a student protest against
that was
school
3 years ago.
Snowball, and all 120 students were suspended for the rest of the day. They had refused to repeat the school's daily pledge that morning and submitted a list of grievances. So the school sent everyone home.
Well, at that time, we started recording verbally and started recording video.
But Joel and Mary Flores, who have a student at the school, say it got even worse when they came to pick up their son. They owned this Spanish-language newspaper, so documented what happened. 2 days after the protest, they published this front-page article.
They didn't like your reporting. No, they didn't, because it brought bad press to them.
Days after that newspaper's story, the school dropped this letter on the Flores family, saying,
So I'm going to read you a portion. Your actions on September 28th, the reputation was just false. Until review of process, you're not permitted school property at any time.
They had detained students without permission for interviews and created a, quote, false narrative, broken school rules through their reporting efforts. They were, and still are, banned from campus.
We missed all the parent-teacher conferences. We missed all of his soccer games that are home field.
In this new federal lawsuit against the school, parents and students contend other students were suspended for
that
going on Facebook
39-page lawsuit
and making derogatory comments about the principal. The lawsuit maintains other students who simply liked those comments were then suspended.
This school was trampled on the constitutional rights of not only the students at the school, but their parents, frankly, the entire community.
Matt Crone represents the Flores family and filed the First Amendment lawsuit.
Kids have constitutional rights in our school system. They don't abandon those rights when they walk through the school doors in the morning.
I agree.
Joel Flores spent 5 years in the military and says he defended the Constitution and First Amendment freedoms.
As a veteran, that's what I served for.
We repeatedly called Victory Prep CEO and principal, and he did not return any of our calls. We will keep trying.
All right, thank you, Brian.
You bet.
Exactly. So, in this case here, schools can limit rights. You can't say you have no warrant. It's just for safety purposes. Remember that. If your school violates your constitutional rights, First Amendment rights, you can file a First Amendment lawsuit. And there are two sides to every story. And with that, that's all for this edition of Give Me a Break Monday. We'll see you again for Give Me a Break Wednesday. With the very latest of Lori Loughling's husband out on jail for the College of Michigan. We'll have that for you on Wednesday. Live from the new nutrition place. That's on Wednesday. I'll see you then. I'll talk with the owner, see if I can get permission. I'll see you then. If not, we'll do it here. Good night.